China's cultural ambitions. Now, this is thoughtful. Hi, I'm Harry Hui in Shanghai. China has grown into a global and political powerhouse. Now it's eager to connect with the rest of the world on a cultural level, particularly in the area of arts and education. With us today is a leader in this industry, Lady Linda Davies, founder of the KT Wong Foundation. She has played a pivotal role in being a bridge between China and the rest of the world, particularly in the field of performing arts. Linda, thanks for joining us today. You were born in Singapore, raised in Malaysia. What has inspired you to devote such a big portion of your life towards this cultural ambassadorship that's connecting China to the rest of the world?
Well, my biggest inspiration, of course, is my father, Dr. KT Wong, which I've named the foundation, which I formed in memory of his work and his love for China. So that was the initial springboard for the idea of doing something for China in the biggest, the most general sense.
And what are some of the foundation's key initiatives that you can share with us today?
Oh gosh, I know we are a rather young foundation, but I think that we've really pulled the punches and really reached very high and partnered with some of the best cultural organizations in the world. I suppose one of the top ones that we've done, the first ones, would be the Chelsea Flower Show, which has just also recently been. It's an annual affair, and that was the year of 2008, where it was Beijing Olympics, and there was a big China drive in the UK, and I wanted to show the British audiences something about contemporary and old China, and the best way I felt was to use gardens, because the British public are completely mad about gardening. So that was quite a good. We commissioned a Chinese artist, and we built an extraordinary garden for the public over there. Thousands of people came, and won a gold medal as well, which is really rather nice.
Was
the first one before the Beijing Olympics.
Was it the first of its kind? Yes.
Yes, it was actually, and they've never been able to. They haven't had one since. I've just come back from the most recent one with the wife of the Chinese ambassador, and she turned to me and said, "Well, when are you going to do the next one?" Oh my goodness me! We did dig the deepest garden ever dug at Chelsea. I mean, there was a joke going around that we might even hit the underground at some stage, but I think they've not let anybody do that anymore.
Well, that was quite an accomplishment, and you've also produced a number of very, very successful initiatives, including documentaries on Lang Lang, and also some very, very big operas in production. So, can you tell the audience can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I suppose the theme for all our initiatives really is about connecting China to the rest of the world and vice versa. And whatever inspires us or gets us going to create and to collaborate these rather special initiatives is the whole idea of introducing old and new China to the rest of the world, and equally the other way back as well. One of the things that we did do after the Chelsea Flower Show was a Baroque opera by Handel. And we really, from one end to the next, Chelsea Flower Show was very traditional, it was very English, you can't get more English than that. But it was a very specific audience, so I knew what I wanted by the choice of the artist that I had committed to. And then on the other hand, there was the Baroque opera. And I chose a rather avant-garde Chinese artist called Zhang Huan, who's actually based here in Shanghai. And most 90% of people who knew about art thought I was mad. I mean, this most avant-garde of artists. What does he have anything to do with Baroque opera? Well, a lot of the times it is about taking risks, calculated risk, though. And through the body of his work, I felt that he could understand and he could tell this Greek myth story, and he did. He delivered, more than delivered, and it has been incredibly successful. We co-produced it with one of the top opera houses in the world, Theatre de la Monnaie in Brussels, and it's since traveled to Canada, Toronto. It's going to go to BAM in New York, and I think it's going to become, oh, well, I forgot. Sorry, it went to Beijing Music Festival too. Yes, exactly.
I saw that on a DVD and I thought the production was superb.
Yes.
There's a theme in China that's very much along the lines of modernity inspired by tradition.
Yes.
So much of that production, so much of that came through with Zhang Huan's interpretation of the old house. I think you've lifted an entire village.
Temple, 400-year-old Ming temple.
Yeah.
He did.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
So did that advance the agenda as far as bridging the understanding between China and the rest of the world, in your opinion?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that, first of all, one of the reasons why this foundation and my aim and purpose in creating all these cultural projects is to find ways, find keys to unlock doors to, the rest of the world to understand what China is all about. Yes, of course, we're all China is economically extraordinarily successful, but still there is so much misunderstanding and, dare I say, misapprehension, perhaps.
What would you, in your opinion, would be some of the cultural divides or gaps that we still need to bridge?
Well, I mean, to just be a little bit facetious, when I first did the garden idea in 2008, I mean, they all thought that a Japanese garden was a Chinese garden, and that was terrible. So I hope that we've gone some way to addressing that, I think so much has happened since 2008. I mean, that's the remarkable thing about what's going on with China. Everything is speeded up, We've just gone with it, and I think that some of the things that we've been able to, well, China just adapts so well and understand, and in particular with Zhang Huan's production, he didn't scare people off. I feel. It's important to draw people in first, make them feel comfortable. Then you land the bomb on them. Right. But perhaps not so much so. But, then you start introducing the ideas. And I think also the title of your show is called Thoughtful China. So that's absolutely perfect because most of the time, I hope, what our productions and our shows do is to provoke thought, thinking, and dialogue, especially amongst the young.
China's cultural ambitions are pretty broad. Obviously, really, China wants to project the right image to the world, not only as an economic and political power. And the cultural aspects of it are really very, very important, but a lot harder to measure in terms of its impact and success. A lot of our audience members are concerned about, or a lot of our audience members would be interested in how to partner with such initiatives and philanthropy. So many of our viewers might be interested from a sponsorship perspective. Yes. How have you found the sponsorship and the associations between your projects and the sponsorship world?
Well, we've been quite lucky, I suppose. Our projects have been quite how shall I say, very exciting. It's really grabbed people's attention. And we have been invited by quite a few times by the Beijing Music Festival, by the Shanghai Music Festival as well. And they're pretty well geared to corporate sponsorship. I mean, we had Audi sponsor Semele. They fell in love with the project, and that was the highlight of that year's season. That was the one that they chose. They had 3 to choose from, but they chose ours, which is very nice. And then I think that, I mustn't forget to mention, one of the proudest things I think we ever did was to bring Daniel Barenboim, who's a very, very famous conductor, he brought his youth orchestra called the East-West Divan Orchestra, comprising of young people drawn from the Palestinians, Israelis, Syrians, everybody, you know, people who usually are fighting all the time, but he's been able to draw all these young people together each summer and tour with them and using music as the best language, the best, you know, way to overcome their inherent, let's say, differences. We brought them here, and I think it was BMW actually who was the global sponsor, so we were very happy to partner with them as well. And we took them to Beijing and to Shanghai.
Let's take a break to hear from our sponsor, and we'll be back to hear more from Lady Davies about China's cultural ambition.
Now, let's go!
Welcome back. We're in the studio today with Lady Linda Davies. Linda, as a founder of the KT1 Foundation, you've really pioneered a lot of really amazing initiatives towards fostering the development of the arts and culture in bridging China to the rest of the world. This practice is probably more developed and better understood in other parts of the world than it is currently understood in China. Can you share with us some of the best practices that you're seeing in other parts of the world that Chinese companies, Chinese successful entrepreneurs should be thinking about so they could do this better?
Yes. Well, I think that now that China is obviously flexing its muscles and buying, you know, purchasing a lot of other things overseas, this is the time where they need to be thinking about how to engage with the markets that are very different from the ones that they have over here, obviously. And going back to what I had said originally, it's for them to, they need to understand what is that particular market. Whatever it is that they may have purchased, you know, I mean, it could be a Wanda Group, you know, distribution of films. It's a different development, isn't it, for them to start thinking globally and how they need to engage with the local markets there. And that's what I've also said with Chinese companies or with Western companies. It isn't enough to just say, I'm only interested in sponsoring this in China. Because if you're a big enough player and you need to reach, you know, bigger, wider, deeper markets or whatever, I think that you need to be able to do this outside as well. Because I think also the government and also the Chinese do think that if you are promoting Chinese talent, not necessarily just Chinese culture, but Chinese talent as we have, you know, engaging them to do different things, this is a way of showing support, I think, for China. And by giving them the X amount or that particular amount on a check, basically it's giving them the stamp of approval. And I think that's rather important for people in China to understand, you know, but they think, oh, it's been accepted overseas, it's fine for coming in over here. That's what I found.
It's almost the highest form of association or sponsorship, isn't it?
Absolutely, you know, by association. I remember now, actually, it's been quite long, with the Chelsea Flower Show. I remember it was over Chinese. Oh, you were there, actually, Harry.
I was there, yes.
And the head of De Beers was there. And I said, you really should sponsor this show because we're digging the deepest garden in Chelsea. And De Beers is all about diamonds, you know, and where do you find down deep in the ground? So you really should.
Did he plant the seed, so to say?
Yeah, I did. Well, he did. He did help sponsor it. And equally, I think over here in China, of course, with luxury items, you know, all the big luxury companies have been in the forefront of promoting and supporting those. But I think now there's a different feeling, there's a different trend about what it shouldn't be so blatant, you know, and that's where we come in, I suppose. We don't have handbags to sell or cars or a pen or whatever. What we sell is something else. And so through association, you see, like, for example, with the goddess, it could be jewelry, very high-end jewelry, or perfume. Cartier, of course, has been around for a long, long time. But there are other top luxury jewelry companies who are dying to come in to make make headway here. And that's what I've been saying to them, that they should, consider this.
So going forward, give us a prediction on China's cultural ambitions in the next 3 to 5 years.
Oh.
What do you think we will realistically be able to achieve?
That's a very tough question, Harry.
Give me one prediction.
One prediction? Well, for sure, I think that there'll be a lot more, because in just sheer numbers and the fact that outside of China, people are much more open, and by sheer numbers, in terms of the talent, that's just the creativity that's coming out. Look, for example, in animation, of course, and design, I think, is huge. Films, obviously. Yes, I think a huge amount. And I think we might see even more, this old thing that we've, about 100, I did a documentary also with the BBC. It's called 100 Million Musicians. Why is it in China that classical music has such a strong hold? And we're coming down the street in the French concession, you see all these music shops selling every guitar, piano possible. So this is the thing, in terms of flooding the world with musicians and incredibly trained and highly talented ones, we're going to see a lot of them. And this is one of the things that the documentary addresses. How do we absorb all this talent that's coming out of the rest of the world, That they can't all be Lang Lang.
So Linda, as the founder of the KT Wong Foundation, tell us about the work that you're doing.
In one word, a bridge, foundation for dialogue, deep, long-lasting, enduring legacy of dialogue and understanding through cultural platforms.
Lady Davies, thanks for being on Thoughtful China today. That wraps it up for today. Be sure to subscribe to us on Youku, Tudou, and YouTube. You can also follow us on Weibo, WeChat, and Twitter, and join our LinkedIn group. See you again.